start with my presentation now. Okay, I hope everyone got some coffee, feeling a bit awake. I promise I won't have slides with lots of text on it. I'll go through a couple of examples fairly quickly. I have been known to speak fairly fast as well in English. I'd like to open this up also to questions. So if you have a question, don't bother sticking up your hand and waiting for me to call on you. Just shout it out, and hopefully I can answer that, and we can keep it a bit interactive. My name is Winand, and I think I have a pretty nice job. I manage what's known as the FabLab here in Groningen. What a FabLab is, I hope to explain that to you in a bit more detail. But in essence, what I do is I work a lot with 3D printers, so the device that you see there. Just to get a feeling of how familiar you guys are with this subject, how many people have seen a 3D printer before? So that's about 4 people in the entire room. So this would be the first time for the majority of you to see a 3D printer. Is that correct? Yeah? Now, do you guys think that 3D printing is a fairly new technique and technology? No. No? Well, you would be absolutely correct. It's been around since the 80s, in fact. It's not very exciting, and especially this type of 3D printing, because 3D printing is a technique, it's not necessarily a 3D printer, it's a specific type of machine, it's a class of machine. These 3D printers are very simple. So I brought this with me. I hope you guys all recognize this. It's a little glue gun. Effectively, a 3D printer is nothing more than a computer-controlled glue gun. It's very boring, it's very basic, it's not high-tech, it's nothing special. Essentially, instead of glue that you can stick in the back, you can stick different types of materials in. It goes through a warmed, heated element in the front, comes out molten, you wait a bit, or you cool it down with a fan, and you get, again, a solid object. If you do this repeatedly and quite exact, well, layer by layer, you can start to build up machines, which is build up objects, which is sort of what you see there. So today I hope to talk to you a bit about why it's only now that we're getting in touch with these 3D printers, or that these are being hyped. We see them everywhere, and people are saying that that we're at the front of a new production revolution, as it were. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way the technology is shared, or the patents behind it. And that's something I'd like to address today, and something that we take to heart at the FabLab. And when I talk about this sharing, or patent-free innovation, or with open license innovation, I'm talking about open source innovation, which essentially means that when you make something, you share the whole design file or everything that you're doing with the rest of the world. Obviously, we're here as part of the School Center of Entrepreneurship. Well, if you're a bit of an entrepreneur and you share everything with everyone, it's very hard to make some money out of that, so that's obviously a challenge, and I hope to address that challenge a bit today as well. But primarily, I want to show you some cool examples of things you can do with 3D printing. A bit about my background, because the talk before here touched a bit on the subject, or at least the dichotomy, the juxtaposition between, say, the way a scientist thinks and the way a designer thinks. Well, I'm a purebred scientist. I studied here at the University of Groningen as well, and I did material science, and I was working with these machines. So this is a focused ion beam. It's essentially it fires up ions at a very precise location, and then you can either take stuff away or add stuff. And I was working with those things before I even touched a 3D printer, or here you can see an Arduino. For those who don't know what that is, it's a computer that you can buy for about 20 euro, or if you buy the Chinese knockoffs, for even like 8 euro. Yes? Sorry, no question? And these are kind of fun devices. You can very cheaply put them in a whole bunch of things that you make, either with the 3D printer to give some interactivity, to add more value to the thing that you're making. Effectively, that meant that I was making these things. So this is a 3D printed thing at the nanoscale. It's a small house among some trees, because I like to play around, and they let me play around with the machine for an hour. So these are trees. They're made out of glass, and they're printed on a silicon wafer. So you can see a scale at the bottom here. It's 2 micrometers. I don't know if there are any scientists, and I hope you still remember this from school. This is very, very small. How small? This whole thing fits about on a red blood cell, just to give you an idea of size. I was doing these things, and it was great, great fun, but I wasn't actually doing any of this stuff, which is, your kind of, plastic squirted nonsense, essentially. And the reason for that was because I thought I was a scientist, I wanted to do really important things, and I thought I need the really big tools in the labs to do all of this. I was very lucky during my research, part of my master's, to go to Oak Ridge National Lab. And I studied physics, and this is where the material for the first atomic bomb was developed, and many great scientists worked there. So for me, this was kind of a dream come true. I was really excited, went all the way to the US, and I got to work in one of the world's largest clean rooms, which essentially is the thing that you see on your left there, which you might recognize from, I don't know, documentaries that talk about how chips are made or how computers are made. Essentially, one of these rooms, they're specially engineered to have very little dust in them. It's pretty cool. You go through these air showers when you go in, but I'd like to, the reason I'm naming this is because one thing we weren't allowed to bring in were pencils. And this is touching on the previous talk. It's a very nice story, these pens and these pencils, and the Americans made this absolutely over-engineered pen, whereas the Russians just made pencils. It's actually a bit of a myth. I'm one of these people who owned one of these space pens as well, and yes, it does write underwater, and it's pretty darn cool. The reality is that in space, it's a closed environment, there's no gravity, so things don't settle to the bottom, and you have very expensive high-tech machinery that needs to work, life-critical machinery. If you get little pieces of graphite stuck in all of that, it's going to muck up the works. Graphite also conducts electricity. If it gets in your electronics, it screws up your electronics. If you're in space, that's a pretty big problem. So yes, there was a very good design reason for creating this space pen. Other than just using a pencil. So nonetheless, the story is very valid. Always look for define your problem properly and look for the correct solution, but yeah, the story doesn't really have a basis in reality. And I was a proud owner of a space pen, but didn't discover this until I was there. But the dream, going to the US and working in this really grand research laboratory, it was fun, but it wasn't everything that I expected it to be. I expected to work together with a whole bunch of scientists solving, crazy problems, and I was working on a project for Intel, creating sort of a procedure to look at, how to make chips, but not this generation of chips, not the next generation of chips, but 2 generations from now. Great fun, but honestly, all of these scientists, they were kind of insular. Everyone was working on their own projects, on their own careers. People weren't really talking in these clean rooms. Everyone was very focused on their projects. While I was there, I also became a member of a community, and the community, it called itself a makerspace, so groups of people who came together to make things. No question, And the great thing about this community is, no one pretended to be smart, no one pretended to know everything, no one pretended they were a fantastic author with all these doctor titles and God knows behind their names. Most of the people there did have doctorate degrees and were all engineers and very smart people, but no one had the pretense to know everything. And this was refreshing, and this was fantastic because people with just bandsaw and the cheap 3D printers, computer-controlled glue guns and laser cutters, relatively cheap things, were making the most fantastic things, and they were doing it because they were working together. And they didn't have the pretense of saying, I'm smarter than you, or I know everything already. They were very, very happy to say, I don't know, or I messed up, and look what I learned from it. And that's something that we hold very true at the FabLab. It's one credo, feel free to fuck up. Fucking up is part of the process. It's called iterative design, and it's part of this design thinking process as well. You're not going to get it right the first time. You're going to make it, try it out again, try and try and try, and eventually something will work. But the really interesting thing is all the things that failed beforehand. So I was there and learned that these types of communities can actually create much, much better ideas, and they're much more accessible because people are willing to work together. So when I came back, I looked around Groningen and thought, well, are there communities here that do similar things? So I went to what was the FabLab. It's called a fabrication laboratory, where they have all types of machines, the 3D printers, the laser cutters, computer-controlled equipment. And I thought, hey, maybe I can work together with some of these people and get some stuff going. And I met some people. We founded a group called Do-It-Yourself Biology Groningen. It's part of, again, a larger movement. And we had the idea, well, let's try and make a PCR machine, but really, really cheap. So for most of you, I assume, don't know, a PCR machine is a polymerase chain reaction machine. It's a machine which is a glorified water kettle, essentially. It heats up and cools down, And what you use it for is it's a very basic first step in doing any type of DNA analysis. It used to be that people, grabbed a little test tube or a little thing and dipped it in different water baths. Well, soon enough, the scientists kind of got sick of that and decided, well, let's do this in a different way. Let's put it in a machine that automatically heats up and cools down. Well, fantastic, but these machines, they cost several thousands of euros because obviously they have to fulfill to lab standards. You can't have your experiment fail because the machine failed, essentially. But we had the idea, well, can we just use off-the-shelf computer components and laser-cut parts and 3D printed parts and try and make it for much cheaper? So this is what we tried to do. And there was already a project out there that had done this, and they had reduced the price down to $600. And we decided, well, let's try and do it even cheaper and aim for around 100 euros. And that's sort of what you see here. So this is what I call our minimal viable prototype. You can't actually do any experiments with it, but it works. And that was good enough for us for the first iteration. That was the starting point, which we then used to develop what you see there. And it's this way of thinking, the working together. I work with biologists. Personally, I'm a physicist. We got someone else who's an electrical engineer to all work together. Everyone contributed with their own expertise, and we managed to create these pretty cool things. But it was the creation first, and then a business model or practical application second, which is also one of the reasons I had one of these space pens. I love over-engineered things. If you make something unnecessarily complicated, I love it, just because you can. Which brings me a bit to the FabLab. I became a volunteer there. It sort of got out of hand, and now I'm managing the place. But the FabLab, essentially, it's known as a fabrication laboratory. And the concept is, well, it's not new. It's fairly old. It was the brainchild of this guy. As most ideas, it starts with a person. This guy's a professor at MIT, and he's the head of a center which is called the Center for Bits and Atoms. And the name itself sort of implies it sees the world of bits, so the digital world, and the world of atoms, so the physical, tangible world that we all know as just one and the same. And they try to translate things from one world to the other. It's very vague, very out there, but he had this great idea and this great vision. And he at MIT he taught this course, and it was called How to Make Almost Anything. Well, I'm a pretty geeky person. When I heard about this course, your first impulse was, oh, I wish I went to MIT so I could follow this course. Well, luckily you don't have to be an MIT student to follow this course because he made it accessible for everyone. So you did have to live in Boston, which was still a limitation for me. But the professor, after giving this course, he gave these students access. Well, he gave these students access to a giant room filled with laser cutters, 3D printers, all sorts of microcontrollers, so these little Arduino boards that you saw, in the hope that people would just come together, contribute their expertise, and then magic would happen, kind of thing. Lo and behold, that actually did happen. So he was like, well, it's great that all these MIT students and everyone in Boston can use this, but shouldn't we expand this to the rest of the world? So that was this great idea. He kind of, decided, well, this is what a FabLab is. It's this collection of these machines. The basic premise is everything's computer controlled, which means that the entire design process gets translated to the digital realm. So you do all your designing on a computer, which means that it's really, really easy to share things with each other, really easy to adapt things, and all the machines do, all the work for you. So the great thing is if you make something, or better yet, let the machine make something for you, and you discover a mistake, it's not like you have to stand, next to 3 machines and repeat the whole production process yourself. You just go in your computer, change the dimension of one of these screw holes, press play again, and the machine does all the work for you. So obviously with this type of thinking, this type of model, the access and education to these tools is very, very important. And he had this idea, just like the older generation, they learned email, they learned word processing, and they learned how to use Excel spreadsheets. Well, if we just learn 2 and 3D design, we can use all of these tools and just let them do the work for us. So I have this ingredient list. I'm just going to in a very childish way go through these. There's a 3D printer, which is a computer-controlled glue gun. You have your laser cutter. It's nothing more than a computer-controlled mirror. Yes, there's a very high-powered laser shining on it, which allows you to cut through, say, wood. But if you do that in special patterns, you can, bend wood as well, which is kind of interesting. So, you're not limited to the 2D just by your 2D design patterns. Then you have a CNC router, which, yeah, it's a very old machine. It's actually just computer-controlled drill. It's being used quite a lot. Nowadays, I call it the inverse of a 3D printer because people know more about 3D printers. With a 3D printer, you continuously add material until you are left with something. With a CNC mill, you start with a big block, and you continuously remove material until you're left with what you want. There are some big design advantages to using additive instead of subtractive manufacturing, which is the technical terms for these things. But 3D printing is just, you know, a PR term for it. What we really mean is additive manufacturing. With additive manufacturing, you can combine materials, you have less wastage. Yeah, there's some pretty big advantages to using this way. Finally, we have a vinyl cutter, which you know, you can make stickers or things to put on t-shirts with. It's just a computer-controlled knife. You can put a little pen in there, and you can, you know, draw your own things as well. And a computer-controlled sewing machine to do very detailed embroidery work. So next time you're in the lab and you want some swanky new name tag on your lab coat, you can come to the FabLab and do these types of things. Obviously, all of these machines, no one can be an expert in all of them, which is sort of why you need this FabLab. You need to bring people together. Everyone will specialize in something else, but as long as you have an open environment where people can ask questions to each other, everyone can learn a bit about everything, and you can all, you know, work together to create these fantastic things. Obviously, when you're doing this type of work, a very important part of it, especially since it's you know, cooperative and it's all digital, sharing is key. And you know, so many people enjoyed this idea of working together, creating new things, that they took this list of ingredients and they decided, okay, let's build our own Fab Labs. And this is a really old map. Again, this I think is a little more than a year old. This shows around 600 Fab Labs worldwide. Now it's over 1,000. And the great thing is, in all these Fab Labs, you have more or less the same machines. So if I design something here in Groningen, I can send it to Japan, they turn on the machines there with the exact same files that I sent them, and they can make it there. So you immediately have a whole distribution network for anything that you create. You can co-create, you can work together on open source projects. The important thing, essential to all of this, is that you share things. Obviously in the Netherlands or in the Benelux, where we've been at it for such a long time, I'll be very honest though, the network here has grown, the FabLab network has grown so fast that we don't actually work together as much as the promise would lead you to believe. So you have these kind of more localized clusters. So Benelux works together quite a lot, whole France works together quite a lot, and the US works together quite a lot. And we try to share as much of this. Obviously next to the FabLabs you have maker spaces and what's known as hacker spaces. These are all technically slightly different things, but it's all people who like to make things and like to share things, and by making and sharing, try to innovate real-world problems. And one such real-world problem, I'd like to share a couple of examples with you now. This one comes from the University of Groningen. In fact, I have the little example here. Feel free to come up later and touch everything. It's just the fun thing about what I do. It's always a show and tell kind of session. These are very small bioreactors. And this was made by a master's student who had, in the beginning, no experience with 3D printing or any type of additive manufacturing or any type of design work either. He was a biologist. He was working in a group called Products and Processes for Biotechnology. What this group does, they try to look at certain things that biology does, try to see, is there a market for this or an industry that can use this process, and let's try and scale it. So the real world problem that he was trying to solve, well, let me phrase it slightly differently. Mars, the company that makes M&Ms, would love to write on their packaging, only contains natural food colorings and these types of texts. Well, the color blue is very, very hard to derive from natural sources. It's really, really hard. But these researchers, they found this algae, which if you grow it under the right conditions, actually produces blue pigment. So their idea is, hey, let's just produce vats of this algae, let them produce blue pigments, then we can sell it to Mars. Mars is happy, they get to put their label on their packaging. There's a whole market here. The problem is every time, obviously they need to optimize this process, so to get it as fine-tuned and streamlined as possible. And to do this, if every time you have to grow this giant vat of algae, and then change one variable, and then grow a giant vat of algae to be able to compare the results, that's a finite process. There's, you only have so much time, there's only so many experiments that you can run. So what they needed is a very small bioreactor, which is essentially just a vat that you grow algae in. There's nothing like this on the market. So sure, you could start a whole product development process, get some product designers involved, and then 20,000 euro down the line, you might have a first minimal viable prototype that could be ready for market in about a year. Great, useless to a research group. So what they did, they said, hey, you master student, I have a project for you. I don't know anything about 3D printers, but we need a small bioreactor prototype. Here's a 3D printer. The university has enough money, luckily, to give him one. Go figure it out. He had a couple months done, and he came up with this. So now they can effectively do in 1 day, so grow in 1 day what previously took 5 days. So just by giving one master student with no knowledge whatsoever a 3D printer and some time, they managed to increase the productivity of the entire research group 5-fold. Now this is quite significant for this type of technology, and it's nothing more than a computer-controlled glue gun. The really important thing is finding the markets to apply it in. And this is sort of what I hope to share with you a bit today. So the markets that you provide in, and also the sharing aspect of things. This is a nice example. I'm not sure, I hope you guys remember the Fukushima disaster. There was a big tsunami. There was a nuclear reactor in Japan which had gotten a big tear in it. It was leaking radiation, and the Japanese government wasn't quite forthcoming about the amount of radiation that was being leaked. There was quite a lot coming out, and the people living around this reactor or in Fukushima had no idea whether they needed to flee or not. The government just wasn't telling them anything. But there was a guy in Tokyo who was working at FabLab, and he knew a bit of things about sensors, and he knew a bit of things about cloud computing, or at least loading things up to a server. So he devised a Geiger counter, which is a little sensor that measures radiation, and it automatically, every time it makes a measurement, it uploads it to a server in the cloud, so anyone can go to a website and see exactly what the radiation is measured by his device wherever he's holding it. Great, except for the fact he lived in Tokyo, which is not near Fukushima, so completely useless to the people who actually needed it. But what did he do? Since he worked in an open source fashion, he grabbed all his design files, and this is all made with really cheap equipment, your computer controlled glue gun. There's some 3D printed parts in there. He made his own electronics and some laser cut parts. Well, with just going to your local hardware store and having a local FabLab, you can make this. So what did he do? He made all of these designs available for everyone online. Anyone could download them and make them himself. Immediately, all of the FabLabs all across all of Japan started churning out these things like crazy, handing them out to all people, distributing them over the whole country. And within about the space of 2 weeks, they had a national coverage of Geiger counters. So they had a reality check to see whether or not the government was actually telling them the truth, and they had real data to base their own decisions on. So speaking of empowerment, I mean, this is not a business, it's more of a social problem you're solving here. But just by sharing things and being open enough with your designs, you can have huge impacts by using this network that's available to you. Another nice example. So this is a printed stethoscope. This is a guy I met. He comes from Canada, but he has a lot of family in Palestine as well, and he's doing some volunteer work. He's a doctor. And while doing his volunteer work, this was about 3-4 years ago, there was, again, some contention with Israel, and Israel placed an embargo, so certain goods weren't allowed to be imported. Among which, unfortunately, were stethoscopes as well, so he literally couldn't do the basics of his job. But, he's well-read, and he'd been reading a whole bunch of things about 3D printing and the promise of 3D printing, but didn't actually have any technical knowledge himself. So what did he do? He went online and he said, well, 3D printing stethoscope. Eventually he ended up on a forum with some 3D printing enthusiasts. So he met a German, a Dutch guy, a Japanese guy, and I think an Italian guy. And they were like, yeah, you know what, sharing is caring, we like to help each other, we'll help you make this stethoscope. So at least you can do your job there. Which is great, because he found his local FabLab. Yes, in Palestine there's a FabLab as well, or at least a makerspace. They made a stethoscope, and which is great because he could do his job. It worked. He could hear things. It works. It's good enough. But then they kind of wanted to test it. when he got back against the real thing. Like, how does it compare? And when he compared them side by side, this stethoscope was much, much better. It actually outperformed the market leader stethoscope. And something that you might not know about stethoscopes, there's effectively one company that makes stethoscopes worldwide. It costs about $200 to produce a stethoscope, which might sound expensive when you've just heard that this is $5, but let's face it, these things last almost a lifetime. For a doctor, $200 is not a high price, and most of them get them as a present, get their name engraved in it. It's a graduation gift from it.
Was there any formal research done on this?
Yes.
To compare the 3D printed and the...
Absolutely. So they did some in-house testing just to check the profiles. The biggest problem that he's facing now, he's trying to get this approved, is that every printer you print it with prints it slightly differently. And in the medical world, you need very rigorous standardized testing. So it's very hard to get this okay for the medical industry. But generally, yes, it outperforms it. Yeah.
So then, why not to switch for injection molding?
Eventually, that could be a very good solution here. The good thing about additive manufacturing is that you can create some very complicated internal cavities, so injection molding, for those not familiar with it, is a production technique where you grab plastic and under high pressure inject it into a mold. And that's how most of the mass-produced things these days are made. So in fact, if you have the design, you have the proven design, you could injection mold and make these on the fly for a cent a piece. The problem is these are optimized for internal sound cavities, and if you then need to remove a mold from your object or your object from your mold, and you have all of these kind of dendrites or outsticking things, sometimes you can't actually remove it, which was a very big problem here. So this additive manufacturing, by being able to make it layer by layer, you can actually make shapes that no other production technique can make.
Yeah, so does this 3D printer makes the whole thing, or only the white thing?
Oh, only the white thing, yeah, I should have been more clear in that. The rest of the stuff you can buy at a hardware store, it's rubber tubing, a few metal tubes, and the earpieces, I think they might actually be 3D printed.
So the 3D printer only makes like these plastic things, nothing from iron or something?
That, again, when I talk about 3D printing, I'm talking very abstract terms. What effectively it meant is additive manufacturing. There are several techniques that you can use, and there's a whole wide range of different types of 3D printers. You will have your essentially, to be able to 3D print something or to manufacture it additively, you need to be able to make it fluid to some extent, and then make it solid at some point. And there are a few ways to do this. One thing is melting and then solidifying things. One is a kind of paste and then kind of curing it, either with UV to make sure it's hardened again. Another one is, in the case of metal printers, lay down some powder and use a laser to melt things together. So there are a whole bunch of different techniques. The one I'm dealing with mainly today, or talking about mainly today, is really your plastic extrusion type machines. The reason I'm talking about these is because the patent has actually the patent has expired on this type of production technique. And the patent being expired allowed the price of these machines to go down because hobbyists worldwide started building them themselves. Because everyone then had one of these very cheap extrusion machines, the material scientists were thinking, hey, now there's a market, let's start to make materials. Now that there's materials, all the designers are coming with very interesting designs for this. Another reason that I'm mainly talking about these machines is the accessibility of it. A full metal 3D printer, well, the university just bought one, I think it was several hundred thousands of euros. I need to speak to the group leader there to get the exact quotation for the price, since it's not listed on any websites. But this thing is 2,000 euro, and this is one of the more expensive varieties. You can already have a 3D printer for a few hundred euros. It won't function very well, but you'll have one.
So the stethoscope normally has a membrane and a belt. It has two sides, and this only has, say, so to speak, the membrane. Is there any designs that's being made of the membrane and the belt together, for which can be 3D printed, or is this
potentially? So multi-material printing is something that has a lot of future, and in my opinion, combining different materials is the advantage of the additive manufacturing process. In this case, it's just a latex glove pulled over this bell with a cavity. So, I mean, he designed this as well, so it's very, very easy to manufacture. You can use it in pretty much any type of situation. So yeah, it's literally just a latex glove and a cavity.
Injection molding process typically takes few seconds.
Sorry?
Automated injection molding process typically takes few seconds of that order, time of that order. This process seems to take a long time. Is that a drawback?
It's the biggest drawback, yeah. So to quickly repeat the question, injection molding is done in a few seconds. If you ever seen one of these machines, it just spits out copies of whatever you're trying to make, like no tomorrow. This takes hours to produce. Just to give you an example, this was a print that's 72 hours long, and it failed in hour 68. And this was because I didn't take care to put the roll in place after I was done with it, and one of the wires had kind of crossed over, so there was a little knot in the wire, and I didn't discover there was a knot in the wire till about there. So yeah, it takes a very long time to print things. This is a bit of an exception. I tried to print this at the highest quality, and that's the major drawback of 3D printing. So something that gets said a lot in the media is, 3D printing, you can make pretty much anything. Later, everyone's going to print out their forks and their plates and then throw it in a shredder, recycle them, and print out new plates when you need them. This is not going to be true because it's just going to take a very long time. Some people would suggest, well, 2D printing in the 80s was, these matrix printers, which is also, we've improved greatly since then, and now we're spitting out, full color A4 sheets in under a second. Potentially, there is some gains to be made, but at the end of the day, you're laying down molten plastic layer by layer. There's only so fast that you can do that, and that is one of the big limitations. On the flip side of that, injection molding, you make a mold, and then you can only make that thing. So you can churn out only that thing. And to make the mold costs, well, depending on which manufacturer you use, what kind of specifications you use, it's several tens of thousands of euros. So this is only viable for if you have large-scale production runs of multiple hundreds or thousands of products. If you're making one-offs, which, let's face it, especially when you're playing around, making prototypes, starting a company, being an entrepreneur, you want to make one-offs because you're gonna make mistakes, and you want to be able to correct those mistakes. There's nothing worse than making a mold ready to make 10,000 of something and discover it doesn't fit because you've forgotten this tolerance of this little screw hole or something like that. Another example of how you can use FabLab or these techniques to create solutions where other solutions already exist. Now, does anyone maybe recognize what this is?
That's a neonatal
incubator, yeah. So this is essentially a box you can put your baby in if it's born too early or it needs to still be monitored under precisely controlled conditions. Now, if you're familiar with a modern hospital and what these machines look like, or if you're just a parent or a normal person, you think, well, that doesn't look really sturdy or safe to put a baby in. That doesn't make any sense. And you're absolutely right. There are much better solutions on the market, but there's a very specific use case for these types of machines. And this was the winning design of every year there's a FabLab conference, and people pitch their ideas, and this was the winner 2 years ago. In fact, the very specific use case for this is disaster areas. So say you're in Haiti and there's this disaster area and you try to offer some aid or relief. You have a fixed budget. Well, great, maybe you can fly in one of these really expensive incubators from either Europe or the US, and then you can save one baby. Fantastic, but it's not very cost effective. Then also, if, God forbid, your incubator breaks down, what do you have to do? You have to call an engineer who has to fly all the way in, who needs to bring all the tools with him to be able to fix it. Again, not very cost effective. But if you can churn out, say, 1,000 of those for the same price as what, one of these hospital grade machines can do, you can actually save many more babies. And the fantastic thing about this is these designs are all open source. You can produce them locally. which also means is that as soon as there's a real actual need for an adaptation to this machine, you can ask the whole community who has access to similar labs that can make prototypes of exactly this machine quite cheaply. Hey, this button isn't quite working, we need a slightly different button, or we need a version with multiple holes so that two people can work on this at the same time. Everyone can then pitch in, upload their designs online, you can produce it locally again, quickly make adaptations. If something breaks, you can replace it yourself. It's much easier to do it that way. Yes, it's not a long-term solution, but for everything there's a use case. And this is sort of the message that I was hoping to bring across today. These techniques, they're not interesting by themselves, but they exist in a context. And sometimes either you can make something that doesn't exist before, in the example of a bioreactor. You can look at an existing thing like the stethoscope and just produce it using a new technique and create great innovation that way. Or you can create a worse version of something just because it's cheaper and it has its own use case as well. These are some examples kind of from the wide world. Obviously at the FabLab here in Groningen we tried to make some things as well. I'd like to share a few of those examples with you today. Does anyone recognize this guy? Yeah? I think most of you are familiar with the city center here in Groningen. These things are all over the city center. Now, about 6 years ago, these things weren't all over the city center, and the local government here, city council, had decided, okay, well, we need trash cans, but trash cans are typically really ugly. How about we make it a design challenge, and designers can come up with the best design to make sure they're still stylish and don't really look like trash cans. Well, I don't particularly think this is such a fantastic design, still looks like a trash can, which I guess is good functionally speaking, so you'll actually throw stuff in there. But the great thing is that the designer who actually won the pitch, before going to city council, he dropped by the FabLab. And he knew we had 3D printers, and he printed out a tiny little mock-up of this trash can. Now I'm talking 6 years ago. 6 years ago, no one had heard about 3D printers before. This was revolutionary, really cool, really new. At the time, he paid about €60 to print this tiny little thing out. Nowadays, if he'd asked us to do this, it costs about €7 to do, just to give you an idea of how much times have changed. I'm not going to say that this was the deciding factor that made the city council, change their opinion or choose his design. But using a 3D printer to be able to communicate your concepts is proven very, very effective. And especially when you're launching something, when you're pitching something, great to have PowerPoint slides and to have your business model canvas up there. But this is a story I hear time and time again from investors. Until I had the prototype and people could feel it and touch it, they didn't really understand what they were trying to pitch. Obviously, it's very dependent on your product. I'm talking more about physical products, not so much apps or IT solutions or anything like that. But this can definitely help. So. Even if you take nothing else away from this, next time you give a presentation, maybe think about, well, is there an object that I can 3D print to allow my presentation to go slightly better? Chances are, just like you have Google to look for web pages, nowadays you have search engines just for 3D objects, and you can just download and print. And they're free to use, they're fantastic. There's a website called Thingiverse, like universe but for things, Thingiverse, and you can just search on there, say you want a plate or a fork or a lamp or something else, a Yoda face, I don't know. You can search on there and you can start to print it out. Another example, this is a designer who was, sorry, you have a question?
Would you like to say something about IPR issues in this?
Yeah, I'll get to those in a few slides. So this is a designer who was trained in the classical production technique. So, when he made something, he'd have to step by step stand next to all these machines, next to a turntable, next to a lathe, next to a sawmill, to make all of these examples. But for one of the projects that he was doing, he wanted to create a new, try a different production technique. So what he had was an installation. It was an art installation for festivals. It was called light graffiti, and his idea was to use a torch essentially to illuminate a special paint coating, which is on a piece of cloth that he hung up in the room, and you could write kind of temporary graffiti with this because it would kind of glow in the dark for a short while when you shone the light on it. And this was fantastic because you had this very kind of transient art show, which for visitors. But his idea was, well, you know, it should be graffiti because, you know, it's not painting, it should be have a graffiti feel. So he sort of wanted a spray can which light would come out of. So he taught himself how to 3D model in a weekend, came up with this design, and then came to us and said, well, can't you 3D print this for us? So the idea that he had is when you press on the button, it sort of presses in the button at a small laser pointer, and through a little mirror, it comes out, you know, through the nozzle where usually the paint comes out. And this doesn't usually happen, but we printed everything out for him, and everything fit perfectly first time around. Usually, you know, it takes about 5 or 6 times to get things fitting right. And he was like, oh, fantastic, give me 10 more. And this is the step that you wouldn't be able to do if you use your classical production techniques. As an artist, you know, you'd have to then again do this step 10 new times, just finish printing. He'd have to do this step 10 other times, or then start to think, well, can I make a mold and use injection molding to try and do this process? So this completely changed his way of thinking, and he hasn't looked back. He now designs everything in 3D and lets all the machines do all the hard work for him. And this is part of, you know, a growing trend, design production. It's all being automated, and everything that, you know, we as humans can contribute is more in the realm of ideas, designs, and I guess business models as well, if you want to place it in the marketplace. This is an example of one of these business ideas. This is a woman, she studied computer science, and for a school project, so completely unrelated to business, had to work out a kind of how load got distributed in a system. Great, she wrote a nice little algorithm for it, got full marks, but then she had the idea, hey, can I, you know, turn this into a company somehow? She had this idea that, she's a dancer herself and knew that ballerina dancers, they get huge forces on their toes because they continuously, you know, have to stand like this, jump up and down, and, you know, the ballerina dancers often really destroy their feet and toes because of this. So her idea was, hey, can I just make a plaster cast, 3D scan that, throw that model through my algorithm to sort of create an inset which you can play in the ballerina shoe, which can distribute this load absolutely perfectly and calculate it. So she came to, first she went to some product designers, because that's generally, if you want to bring a new product to market, that's the flow that she goes through. And she got quotes for, you know, several thousand euros, ranging up to tens of thousands of euros. Great. Not exactly what she was looking for, you know, student budget. She had a couple of tens of euros to spend on this. So she came to the FabLab. And our mission there is, okay, so we have all these machines, we're happy to answer your questions, but what we try to do is we try to let you do the work yourself, and we'll teach you how to do it. And she absolutely loved this, since she didn't have to pay for, you know, expensive engineers to do all the work for her. She could do it herself, was smart enough to do it. So for 10 euros, she got to use the 3D scanner to scan in the foot. For another 10 euros, she 3D printed it out of a new type of plastic, which is this flexible rubber plastic. And then already, this was her prototype. She actually sold her prototype and already had enough money, and she was already profitable after, you know, with her first prototype. So she did another couple of iterations, and about a year ago, she won a big prize to, you know, launch this startup, and got some seed funding to make the international company. So already with 20 euro, you know, starting seed investment, you know, you can get a long way as long as you're willing to put some of the work in yourself, and you know, you use the FabLab to the fullest extent. Now I'd like to talk about some IP issues. So one of the big success stories coming out of FabLabs is a brand called Ultimaker, which is, again, the brand of the 3D printer that you see there. Now, Ultimaker used to be 2 guys, 2.5, 3, well, there was one guy who was kind of loosely associated, who at the FabLab in Utrecht, just for fun, were building 3D printers. Now, 3D printers, they've been around, well, these types of 3D printers have been around since the 80s. And what they were keenly, so as soon as the patent ran out and expired, the whole kind of hobby community went absolutely crazy, and they started coming up with their own iterations and new designs. And one of the projects that was given rise to was called the RepRap project. The whole idea of that project was a 3D printer that can print a 3D printer, because then you kind of have the self-sustaining process, and, you know, everyone's happy, and, you know, you only have to make one good 3D printer, and then the rest of the world, you know. Obviously, 3D printing motors, electronics and stuff, it's not possible yet. I'm pretty skeptical as to when this will be possible, but the whole design competition is make a 3D printer with as few vitamins as possible, and vitamin is anything that's not 3D printable. Well, they were building these printers, having loads of fun, but the licensing on this RepRap project was a Creative Commons share-alike license. Now I'm really curious, who's heard of Creative Commons licenses before? Raise your hand. Ah, good, already a few people. So this is, often it's called a very viral license. It's something that you'll see quite a lot online. It's CC, just, you have C for copyright. Now it's CC, two C's next to each other. And it's a viral license because it effectively says, okay, I'm sharing this with the world. You can use it for whatever you want. Usually you can specify a few different things. But one of the things I require of you is that if you come up with an improvement and a good design iteration of this, I compel you to share it with the same license that I shared it with you. So you have this kind of viral license. So every innovation automatically gets shared with everyone. And they were building these RepRap printers. And at a certain point they decided, hey, can't we use the laser cutter to kind of create this nice enclosure for it? And that made everything much sturdier, much cheaper as well to make. And then they had this wonderful choice. It's like, okay, we actually have this very good design. Are we gonna, pretend like this is all our design and put it on the market and get investors and try to sell it that way? Or are we gonna hold true to these, Creative Commons ideals, open source ideals, share it with the rest of the world and see what happens? Obviously with the risk that China says, nice designs, we can produce that for a tenth of the price, ha ha ha. Well, they decided to share it with the rest of the world, and a surprising thing happened, and this is a very good case for an open source business model. Obviously, this is an exception to the rule. Generally, intellectual property is something to be desired, especially at lots of research costs. The great thing is, since most of the people at the time working with 3D printers were all tinkerers, all hobbyists, all people working on this RepRap project as well, they really, appreciated the fact that these guys shared this open source with the rest of the world. So all of these hobbyists, they started buying this machine. Now, in the US, there was a similar company called MakerBot, and they had pretty much the exact same design improvement at exactly the same time. This happens all the time, all over the world. And they were faced with a similar choice. Are we going to hold true to our open source ideals, share it with the rest of the world as we were promised? Or are we going to pretend everything is ours, and keep some secrecy, not share the designs, and in that way say, yes, our intellectual property is protected, and get investors that way? Well, obviously being in the US, IP is king, investors are everything, and they're going to insist that everything is protected. So they went to closed source, and the big problem, so they got lots of seed funding, lots of investors, bought by one of the bigger 3D printing companies. Problem is they're losing market share now, and that's because effectively what Ultimaker managed to do is they outsourced their research and development process, part of their company, which most often is one of the most expensive parts of your company, to hobbyists worldwide. Because hobbyists worldwide, as soon as they came out with a new design improvement, they were also compared to share it with the rest of the world. Whereas no one was willing to, come up with a design iteration for MakerBot and say, you know what, let's share it with the rest of the world. They tried to sell it to MakerBot, is sort of what they were trying to do. So MakerBot had to pay for really expensive engineers to come up with all sorts of new technical solutions, whereas Ultimaker was, had it on the cheap. The hobbyists worldwide were kind of contributing to what they were doing. So this is one of the big success stories of an open source business model, and in fact now they're taking over the entire American market as well. It's the largest company for the hobby market, 3D printing, obviously, but the metal printers and other types of printers, they're still protected by patent. They don't fall under this RepRap project. But these guys are pretty big now. Obviously, they sold the company. Now it's run by different people. But even now with the Ultimaker 3 that was just came out, they are going to open source the designs. They've kind of adapted their business model slightly, so they delay it by 2 months, so that at least they buy themselves some time to sell a bunch of machines, get their initial investment back. Then they open source everything, see what kind of design iterations come back, and that they will take into the Ultimaker 4, obviously. So there's a lot to be said for sharing everything that you do, sharing it with a wider community, because then you can actually get input from a much larger group of people. Going it alone, yeah, you can do it, but oftentimes, other people can have other inputs, other insights that you never had. And there's something to be said for not, coming up with an idea, getting a patent, and then resting on your laurels and kind of, hoping that that one idea that you had that one time is going to make money for, the next 20 years, or in the case of some patents, 70 years till after you're dead. There's something to be said by sharing your idea, seeing what other people can come up with, adding value to your idea, and in that way maintaining your competitive advantage through continuous iteration, improvement, and innovation, rather than protecting it legally, which is a very different type of business model. Obviously, with a very big caveat, this is not a proven business model, but there is a lot of space to be explored here, and this is one of the first examples, not one of the first examples, obviously, because I don't know if you're familiar with Linux or Unix operating system, similar to Windows and Mac. It's open source, it runs the back end of every single server, everything you do online. It's only the end users usually that use the Mac and the Windows. That's one of the world's largest open source projects, and it's hugely successful, and it's crazy, but it's true. People can make money by writing code and sharing it freely with the rest of the world. The fun thing is, with this 3D printing, this digital manufacturing revolution, everything is computer controlled, and to take advantage of this, you're going to have to share things with each other. So accepting that as a given and then building your business model around that is something that I would argue is actually something you should strive for. And this is something we try to do with FabLab, and try to motivate people to do at the FabLab, and to maintain your competitive advantage through innovation. Now, I've talked a bit about how 3D printing is not really something new. It's been around since the 80s. Well, why are we only seeing it now? It's because the patents were on there. It's because only Philips could afford these types of machines. One of these computer-controlled glue guns, it cost like 20,000 euro. 10 years ago, 6 years ago even, which is absolutely crazy. It's just a computer-controlled glue gun. There's no reason it needs to be that expensive. Of course, on the flip side, there's a lot to be said about patents for medical research, because the production of the medicines is very cheap. But all of the research behind it and what makes it work is obviously very expensive. So I'm not arguing let's get rid of patents, but when you're talking about computer-controlled glue guns, I think patents are getting in the way of innovation rather than trying to accelerate and promote it. So if you ever have a business idea, if you ever have an idea, try and think about, maybe if I open it up, would that actually yield more for me in the long run as well? Can I even create a community around it like that? But yeah, with 3D printing being around since the 80s, I sort of wanted to throw it at the future, sort of what's next? If in the 80s the first 3D printers were there, and now we're only starting to talk about it, what are the interesting things we'll all be talking about in 10 years' time? There are actually two things. And the whole FabLab community is already kind of jumping on this. We see, these types of machines as production machines, but we can also kind of, change paradigm and see biological organisms or living things as production machines. We exhale carbon dioxide. We have waste products as well. These waste products could be beneficial, or it could be resource streams in other manufacturing processes, or you could reprogram bacteria to produce medicine, for example. In Europe, we have very strict rules on all of this. We can't just willy-nilly, start messing around with the genetic code of all sorts of creatures. In the US, they're less strict, and they're going a little crazy, if you ask me. They're making glow-in-the-dark trees and plants with the idea to try and replace street lighting. They genetically, so if you want to make silk, you have to milk silkworms, which apparently is a very expensive, laborious, and hard process. So this guy had a bright idea. Well, why don't I just change the DNA of a goat so that when it produces milk, it produces the silk protein in the goat as well. So you just need to milk the goat and bam, extract the silk from there. You're done. You don't need to deal with all of the silkworms anymore. There's great competition as well, and the reason I mention this is because Groningen is quite doing really well in these competitions, called the iGEM competition. International Genetically Engineered Machines competition, and Groningen once won the prize in 2006-7, I think. What they did is they made a bacteria which, when it smells a certain type of gas, it changes color or produces a certain pigment. The great idea is you can put this on the inside of, say, your meat packaging, and when your meat starts to go rotten, it emits this weird smell, which I assume if you're like me and sometimes don't take care of your fridge, you know the smell. The bacteria can detect this, change color, and effectively what you have is a sticker. It's a live sensor which can tell you whether your meat is off or not. So even in your transportation process, when your meat gets to you, maybe it hasn't been refrigerated the entire the entire way. At least you have this extra sticker to verify this thing. So these techniques is also something that FabLabs are looking at, seeing life as a production machine and seeing what you can do with that. And the great thing is it's becoming very easy to do. It's almost becoming like computer programming. There are certain blocks, say I need this input, say it smells this, and I want this output, it produces this machine. Well, then you know that you can link these types of processes together to get from this input to that output. Obviously, there are all sorts of ethics things that come into play here, and in Europe we're treading very carefully. In the US it's Wild West and they're going absolutely crazy, so watch the space there. There's some interesting things going on. I've talked a lot about starting digitally as well and having machines produce the physical, tangible things. Obviously, since the concept comes from the Center for Bits and Atoms, we're looking at going the opposite direction as well. So starting with the physical, 3D scanning the world around you and making it accessible through virtual reality goggles. So these are a few of the future trends. So yeah, watch this space. They're going to get interesting. Lastly, the FabLab here in Groningen. We're a volunteer-run organization. We try to run as cheaply as possible, try and keep it as cheap as possible for anyone who wants to use it. Just like your doctor's office, you can come by when you're sick. Well, if you have questions about wanting to make something, we have 3 sessions, 3 times a week where we're open. It's always free to ask questions. As soon as you want to make something, yeah, we're going to charge you for the material cost or the machine cost, but we're still a bit cheaper compared to any other company that you might enlist. So if you're starting out a company and you're not doing a service or an app or something like that, and you're making a physical, tangible thing, why don't you drop by, see what's possible. Obviously, the first thing that we're going to ask you to do is, have you done any research yourself? Have you tried to do it yourself yet? As long as you're willing and can demonstrate that you have the initiative and are willing to do the work, we're happy to give you all of the information and the tools to do it. I'd like to end it here just before the time. If you have any other questions, I recommend come in one of these opening hours. I can give you some time later. They're on the FabLab.groningen.nl website as well. Yeah. Thank you.